Good to be able to talk to you again. Now this is part of the UK and US civilization course, and it's the last lesson, okay? It's about the US economy, and this is an overview. We're going to cover the natural geography of the United States, an overview of US economy, agriculture, manufacturing, military, finance, trade balance, and strengths and weaknesses of the US economy. Now, to start with the natural geography, here we have a map, okay? As you can see, the United States is located between two oceans, one on the east, which is the Atlantic Ocean, and one in the west, which is the Pacific Ocean. To the north, we have Canada, and to the south, we have Mexico. Now, internally, now this is the landmass, because there are other parts. We have Hawaii in the Pacific Ocean, and we have also Alaska in the north. Now, if you look closely at the map, you see on the left side, toward the Atlantic Ocean, we have the Appalachian Mountains. It's the purple color. And on the west side, we have the Rocky Mountains and the Sierra Nevada, okay, mountains. Now you can see that the United States is geographically located between two mountain chains, okay? A mountain chain on the east and a mountain chain on the west. And this makes the weather or the climate of the United States more, let's say, continental, which means we have high temperatures and also low temperatures. If you go a bit to the center from each side, we have lowlands, not mountains, but lowlands. And the lowest you can get is around the Mississippi Valley. So in the middle, it's more of a valley. You have mountains on the sides and a sort of valley, plains, okay, in the center. Now, this is very briefly the general features of the map. Now, the total area is almost, you can see here, almost 10 million square kilometers, which is something like 13, 14 times the area of Morocco. So it's including Alaska and Hawaii. And as I said, it's caught, the United States is caught between two mountain ranges, the Appalachian and the Rockies, or the Rocky Mountains. So in between these two mountain ranges, we have a very large valley sloping down to the Mississippi River, which is somewhere in the center of the country, with its affluents, okay? The river, the other rivers that pour into the Mississippi. Now, the Rockies alone occupy nearly a third of the US landmass, so it's a large mountain chain. Now, let's go to the US economy as such. Now, generally, the population of the United States it's less than 5% of the global population. It's not much. And yet, they produce more than 40% of global output. So 50% of people produce more than 40% of global production. Now, and half of world millionaires are American, okay? Half are American. And it's also the second in food security index. Food security index means how much food do they produce? Do they produce less than what they need or more than what they need? So it's the second safest country in the world in terms of food, after Ireland. So this shouldn't be taken as a surprise. And it's also the 13th in human development. The United States is 13th globally in human development. This concerns education, health, housing, and so on. Now, there is a problem here. It's the income disparity. most of the wealth of the United States is concentrated in the hands of very few people. So it's this 0.1%, that's 1 in 1,000, of the entire population of the United States earns 196 times the bottom 90%. So most of the wealth is concentrated in the hands of very few people. No farming, okay? US is the first farming nation in the world, okay? They produce more food than any other nation. It's many eco-regions, as we've seen earlier. We have the mountains, we have the other regions, okay? And the place where farming is practiced, normally it's in the United States, it's very large, okay, sections of the country. They are called belts. We have the dairy belt in the area of the Great Lakes. If you can see the map again, it's the northeast, where we have the Great Lakes. There you have cattle raising, cows and milk. And we have also south of the Great Lakes, the GL's Great Lakes, we have the corn belt. This is where pork is raised, okay? So much pork in the United States, and they sow corn for, okay, these porks. And we have the wheat belt. It's along the Great Plain. If you remember the map, it's now this is the map showing the information I told you a couple of minutes ago. Now, these are the Great Lakes, okay? The northeast of the United States. There we have the dairy belt. It's where cattle, I mean cows, are raised, and that's where milk is produced. And we have the corn belt here. This is for the pork culture, for the pigs. And general farming, mainly vegetables and fruits. And then here we have, toward the south, we have the old cotton belt, the old cotton plantations you knew from your history course. And then we have the spring wheat belt, spring because it's warmer, and normally the north of the United States is much colder and much cooler than the south. So in spring, wheat, okay, is let's say cultivated in the north, and in winter, since it's warmer down south, it's cultivated in winter, okay? Wheat is cultivated in winter in this area. Now, and the rest, this is grazing, okay? And also some crops toward the west. And this is, if you remember from the first map, it's the Rocky Mountains, okay? So let's move to the next slide. And this time it's the production. Now, as you can see, this is in $1 billion. If you check the value of farming produce, we have grains with the largest value, $77 billion, okay? It's almost the gross domestic product of Morocco, followed by cattle. Cattle means mostly cows, poultry, chicken, and milk, 31.8. So you have a clear idea of how production is distributed, and this is expressed in terms of billions of dollars. So it's lots of money. It's a very big sector. And then we move to manufacturing, okay? Manufacturing in the United States employs more than 12 million people and is increasing, okay? More people are being employed in manufacturing. Now, there is something called production sharing, which is many people, okay, many countries contribute to the production of the same product. And here the United States is involved in chain production with Mexico, Canada, and China. With Mexico and Canada because they are the neighbors within the NAFTA agreement, that's the North American Free Trade Agreement, and also China being also a great manufacturer. The main manufacturing sectors in the United States are petroleum, steel, automobile, aerospace, telecommunications, chemicals, electronics, food processing, consumer goods, and lumber. So it's a diversified sector. It's not just one or two small sectors. Now, the US is the second largest manufacturer after China, okay? Now, China is the first manufacturer now, with 20% of world industrial production. Now, the United States produces, okay, 1/5 of the world industrial production. Most technologically powerful economy in the world, okay? Although it's not the largest manufacturer, it still has the edge on technology. Computers, pharmaceuticals, medicine, aerospace, and the military. Now, the United States has the edge, let's say, in these sectors. Now, this is a curve showing the, let's say, as the title shows, the historical outlook at the US manufacturing sector. We have two colors. We have the red color, which shows a steady increase, and we have the blue curve, which shows a clear, okay, decrease. Now, the blue color is manufacturing. So you can see that starting from 1980 to 2012, this is not very recent, okay? As percentage of GDP, now the United States manufacturing sector used to contribute, let's say in 1980, 20% of US GDP. And now, as you can see, it's quite low. It's around 10 or 12% of US GDP. Now, the services, if this graph is to show anything, is to show that the services sector, okay, is contributing more to US GDP than manufacturing. So this is a historical trend. Now, when we speak about US manufacturing, our mind goes to the military, okay? Now, there's an estimated spending of nearly 1 trillion, okay? It's more than $900 billion, followed by China and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Now, the United States is the first in military spending, followed by China and then Saudi Arabia. It's the second largest item in the federal budget. If you check the budget, mizania, of the United States, you see that the military spending is the second on the list. Now, it's normally a very complicated budget. It's not just one thing, the military, and the military itself is many things at the same time, even including Homeland Security, Veterans Affairs, Cybersecurity, FBI, and Department of Justice. They're all included in the same budget. So it's a huge budget. Now, if you divide the budget, the amount of money the United States spends on militarization, and you divide it by the number of people, how much does every person pay? Now, we have Saudi Arabia is the first country in terms of spending in the military. If you look at the numbers from the single person point of view, if you divide the entire amount among the population, you obtain this graph. Now, first it's Saudi Arabia, and then the United States, and then third Israel, and then Singapore, Kuwait, and so on. And the lowest countries are Germany, Canada, and Sweden. Now, world military spending, now this is globally, at the nation level, not at the person level. Now, this is 2018. We have the USA topping, okay, the list with about $650 billion. Now, this is not the 900 we mentioned earlier, because other expenses are not included in this, okay, in these statistics. Followed by the rest of NATO, and you can see in red we have China, which is about third. China spends on militarization about the third of what the United States spends. And you have other countries. This is just to give you an idea of how much important is, let's say, armament in the manufacturing sector in the United States. Now, finance. I hope I'm not, let's say, rushing. Now, when we say finance, this is not any finance, but public finance. Now, taxes are collected at the federal, state, and local government levels, okay? So you pay to your local government, you pay to the state, and you pay also to the federal government. Now, the three levels of tax collection. And the federal tax, I mean the tax paid at the federal level, consists mainly of income tax. Every person with an income pays tax on income. So the share of the federal tax is 50%. So nearly 2 trillion, okay? The US government, the federal government, gets 2 trillion from income tax. And this is the fiscal year 2021. Payroll tax, okay, 36%, and then corporate tax, 7%. Now, there are other taxes, but these are the most important ones, especially the income tax. Now, the federal government pays, now, it gets money in the form of taxes, but it also spends money. This is public finance. Now, the federal government pays 1 trillion for Social Security, more than 300 billion for Medicare, 43 billion for unemployment insurance. Now, these are the major expenses of the federal government. I hope this is clear. Now, the trade balance, okay? Imports and exports. Does the United States export more than it imports, or what? Now, in 2019, trade deficit. Now, there is a trade deficit, meaning that the United States imports more than what it exports. There was a trade deficit of more than 616 billion, lower than in 2018, okay? One reason is the trade war with China, and you must have heard about it, and also the trade war with the EU. Another reason is the stronger dollar. When your currency is expensive, okay, this affects your trade balance negatively. Car imports are the primary drivers of the deficit. What makes the US have a deficit instead of a surplus is the amount of cars, the number of cars, okay, they import. In 2019, it was 376 billion. Now, 376 billion is about 4 times the economy of Morocco, 4 times the entire economy of Morocco. Now, and the United States exported more services. So in terms of services, the United States has a surplus. But this surplus is offset by the deficit, by the, let's say, the size of the imports. Now, they exported more services, 847 billion, and they imported 597. These are services, okay, only in 2019. So they have a deficit. Now, as you can see here, we have again 3 colors. We have the dark blue, which is the total. We have light blue, goods, balance of payments, and we have services in red. Now, this is equilibrium. No surplus and no deficit, the line which corresponds to the 0 here. Now you have the red line, which is the services. It's positive, meaning that in terms of services, the US has a surplus. But if you look at the light blue color, we have a large deficit. And if you put them together, you still have a deficit, okay? And there are 2 critical moments that affected negatively the trade balance of the US. It's the beginning of NAFTA in 1984, okay? And also when China joined the World Trade Organizations. The World Trade Organizations. These two affected the US trade balance negatively. Another way of presenting the same chart, okay? So the blue, it's services, it's positive, it's a surplus, and goods, okay, it's negative, meaning there is a deficit. And if you compare the blue color to the red color, they're not, okay, let's say symmetrical. The blue is too small to be able to cover for the losses, if you can call them losses, due to the imports in goods. Now, where does the money go, okay? Who benefits from this US trade deficit? Now, China, okay? China benefits. There is a surplus on the side of China, okay, favoring China in this type of trade, followed by Mexico, Germany, Japan, Ireland, and other countries. But China remains, okay, the largest winner in this trade situation. As you can see from the title here, it's called the biggest US job killers, meaning China is taking away US job, and that's why President Trump started a trade war with China to reduce this trade deficit with China. Now, generally, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the US economy? Now, the major strength is research and development. The United States invests a lot in research and development. It has been the leader in research and development for more than a century. Now, after World War II, US investment in research and development represented more than 2/3 of global investment. Now, the United States invested twice what the rest of the world invested. Businesses contribute. This is not only state investment, but it's also businesses. Businesses contribute a greater share than the federal funding to R&D, and now it has reached 78%. 78% of funding of research in the United States, okay, is financed by businesses, not by the state. Now, these 4 points here are weaknesses. Now, the income disparity, you remember we mentioned earlier, so much, please excuse the typo here, so much wealth concentrated in the hands of very few. The tariffs, meaning if you want to send things, if you want to export things to the US, you'll have to pay lots of money as tax, okay? High tariff increase production costs, because when people pay tax for what they get, okay, this, let's say, increases also the production costs. The debt levels, they limit, okay, the national debt and household debt, they limit growth in the long run. We have rising interest rates, okay? If you want to apply for a bank loan, okay, there are always interest rates, but in the United States, they tend to be higher sometimes. So they limit spending and investment, okay? I guess we're done. Thank you for your attention, and good luck.